Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Whitney Heichel. On October 19, 2012, police discovered the body of 21-year-old Whitney Heichel. Her body was found about 40 minutes from her home in Gresham, Oregon, near a fire. Whitney had been missing since October 16. The last person to see her alive was her husband Clint Heichel, who saw her leave their apartment at 6:45 a.m. She kissed him goodbye and rushed to work for her 7 a.m. shift at a local Starbucks, but she never arrived for work. Clint became worried when he called Whitney's workplace to check on Whitney and see if she was okay. Her co-workers said that she hadn't come to work today, possibly because she was sick and decided to stay home. But Clint dismissed this idea. In the morning, Whitney felt fine and had come to work early in the morning. It was unusual for her not to be at work at this hour. She had never been late or missed a day before. And Clint also said that he couldn't reach her by phone. Sensing that something was wrong, he contacted the police around 10 a.m. that same morning. On the same day, police discovered that the Whitney's bank card had been used at a nearby gas station just hours after she went missing. Additionally, her black 1999 Ford Explorer was seen in the Walmart parking lot. What could have happened to her? Whitney was a hardworking, kind, and beautiful woman who was very religious and regularly attended her local church. She had strong relationships with her co-workers, family, friends, and neighbors. At the time she disappeared, she had been married to Clint for 9 months. They were a happy couple, and those close to them believed they had an ideal relationship. Whitney grew up with 6 siblings. Among her siblings, she was known for her determination and kindness. Clint appeared to be a very devoted husband. Friends and family found it hard to believe that someone so caring could harm Whitney. Many people in the community supported Clint, dismissing any accusations against him. The case sparked significant public interest. During a local media interview, Clint smiled while discussing his wife's disappearance, which raised suspicions among police. However, many interpreted this smile as a sign of nervousness. The police conducted a thorough investigation into Clint, but he had a solid alibi. He left the house shortly after his wife did. New information has surfaced indicating that Whitney's car was spotted near a Walmart on the outskirts of Gresham. Witnesses reported that a man was driving the car while Whitney was in the passenger seat. However, the witness could not provide a description of the driver or the condition of Whitney. Whitney's car was later found in the store's parking lot, with broken glass on the front passenger door. Signs of a struggle and blood were also discovered, and samples were sent to the lab for analysis. Unfortunately, the store's video surveillance cameras were positioned too far away to identify who was in the car. The only information obtained from the footage was that the car was left in the parking lot at 11 a.m. Efforts to locate additional witnesses who might have seen the car were unsuccessful. The police discovered information about a man in Whitney's car and started investigating who she might have been with. Whitney's family denied that she had a boyfriend. Her brothers were at work during that time, and none of her friends were with her in the car that morning. A search for Whitney was actively conducted in the area where she went missing, as well as in nearby forests and bodies of water. Unfortunately, her phone could not be tracked because it was likely turned off the day after her disappearance. On October 17, 2012, an important piece of evidence was found in the bushes near a service station, not far from the Walmart where her car was seen. A child discovered Whitney's mobile phone and gave it to some adults. When the police learned about this, they checked the phone and found it had been turned off the entire time, preventing them from tracking its location. The phone had dozens of missed calls and messages from her worried husband, along with calls from colleagues and other relatives. By this point, police were convinced that something terrible had happened to Whitney. Everyone who knew Whitney hoped she was safe, but police lost hope when they discovered blood in her car. Neighbors and church members joined in the search for her. Multiple search parties were quickly organized to comb the areas near Whitney's last known location. Meanwhile, police are reviewing the details of the incident and the information they have at the time. The recording did not provide any clues to identify the kidnapper, and there was no clear image of him on the surveillance camera. It appears that Whitney attempted to use her phone to call for help, but the attacker noticed and took the phone, possibly throwing it into the bushes where it was later found. Alternatively, he may have forced Whitney to throw it away in front of him, especially if he threatened her with a weapon. Additionally, the kidnapper did not contact anyone or demand ransom, suggesting that this was not a typical kidnapping for money. As time passed without Whitney being found, it is likely that she was murdered. The police started questioning residents of the apartment complex, including the Whitney's neighbors. Some residents were unaware that the Whitney was missing, while others expressed hope that she was safe and would return soon. Initially, nothing suspicious was discovered until the police spoke with one of the neighbors, Jonathan Holt. He had a close relationship with Clint and Whitney. In fact, Whitney's family gave Jonathan a key to their apartment so he could take care of their cats and plants while they were away. Just 2 weeks before Whitney went missing, Clint helped Jonathan start his motorcycle. Jonathan was involved in the search for Whitney after she went missing and offered support to her worried husband. As the police questioned Jonathan, he became increasingly nervous, leading to incoherent and confusing responses. The contradictions in his statements highlighted that he was inventing alibis on the spot. Initially, he claimed that he had been robbed that morning, but this turned out to be entirely false. When police inquired why he hadn't reported the robbery to the police, they found that his second alibi was also untrue. Police concluded that he had not been at work that day. Those who knew Jonathan, including Whitney's family, described him as a calm and friendly young man who had never caused any trouble. He was happily married, and police found no evidence of substance abuse or criminal behavior in his past. Jonathan was a good student, graduating from high school in 2006. 4 years later, he proposed to his girlfriend and she said yes. The couple initially lived in a nearby apartment complex before moving next door to Whitney's family just months before Whitney went missing. Jonathan recounted the events of that fateful morning. On the morning of October 16th, Whitney found Jonathan waiting for her outside her apartment. He had asked for a ride to work, and because they were close and trusted each other, she felt safe and agreed. Whitney was always willing to help others. They got into her car, and she started driving. About 5 minutes into the drive, Jonathan pulled out a 9mm pistol and pointed it at her, demanding that she take him to a secluded area near Lake Roslyn. Terrified, Whitney complied and stopped at the specified location. There, Jonathan attacked and raped her at gunpoint. The police later discovered the firearm nearby. After the attack, Jonathan feared that she would report him to the police, so he shot Whitney to avoid arrest. Jonathan threw away the gun, placed Whitney's body in the trunk of his car, and drove to a remote wooded area. He buried Whitney in the bushes and then drove to a Walmart parking lot. There, he parked his car in a secluded area, away from surveillance cameras. Subsequent investigation revealed that the blood found in the car was Whitney's. He then returned home, discarded his bloody clothes, and showered to remove any traces of gunpowder from his hands and the blood. According to police, the window had been intentionally broken to throw the investigation off track. The autopsy revealed that Jonathan had made no effort to conceal his evidence in the car. Several pieces of physical evidence were recovered, including DNA from both Whitney and Jonathan. Whitney was discovered on October 19th after the killer reported the crime and revealed the location. Her body showed signs of severe mutilation and gunshot wounds from close range. Additionally, there were indications of decomposition, which made the forensic investigation more challenging. The police had Jonathan's confession, strong DNA evidence linking him and the victim found in Whitney's car, Jonathan's fingerprints on the gun that shot Whitney, and his DNA on her body after the attack. All of this confirmed Jonathan's testimony. Whitney's husband Clint was devastated after his wife's death. He found it hard to believe that Jonathan, a family friend and neighbor, could commit such a terrible act against his wife. The police gathered sufficient evidence to charge Jonathan Holt with first-degree murder. He had already been arrested and was cooperative throughout the investigation, providing the police with all the necessary information. It appeared that he genuinely regretted his actions and felt a deep sense of guilt. An autopsy of Whitney's body confirmed that she died from gunshot wounds, with the Jonathan shooting her 4 times in the head. Experts stated that she died instantly. In court, a recording of the Jonathan's testimony was presented along with all the evidence against him. The lawyer argued that the Jonathan showed remorse for his actions and had confessed to the crime, which should warrant a lighter sentence. Jonathan expressed his sorrow to his family and friends for the loss of they. He explained his behavior as being because he had a secret crush on Whitney. Even though he was married, every time he met Whitney, he felt intense emotions, but she remained cold and indifferent. He eventually lost control when she rejected him. During the trial, Jonathan spoke about his actions. In front of everyone present, Jonathan admitted to first-degree murder, kidnapping, and rape of Whitney. During the court proceedings, the Jonathan mostly kept his head down, appearing guilty. He began to cry when the relatives of the Whitney shared how his actions impacted their lives, but he cried the hardest when her husband Clint spoke. He tried to look at Clint 3 times, but each time he quickly looked down. On July 8, 2013, Jonathan Holt was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The weekend following the trial, he was transferred to the Hammer County Detention Center in Noma County. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Victoria Rickman. At 2:30 a.m. on Friday, September 13, 2013, Victoria Rickman, 30, called 911 from her home on Cliffland Road in DeKalb County, Georgia. She reported a violent incident involving her fiancé, William Carter. She told the operator that he had tried to rape her again, and despite her pleas for him to stop, he didn't, so she shot him multiple times. When the police arrived, they found Victoria at the door, holding a small dog. Inside the bedroom was a scene of chaos and violence. The lifeless, naked body of a man was on the bed, riddled with bullets, and blood was splattered throughout the room, with bullet holes marking the walls and ceiling. A .40 caliber pistol was found on the nightstand. The victim, 30 years old William Carter, was declared dead at the scene. Victoria, in a state of hysteria, required medical assistance. After examining the scene, the police initially concluded that it was a case of self-defense, as Victoria claimed William had attacked her, forcing her to shoot randomly in defense. She was taken to the police station to provide a statement. However, as the investigation progressed, new details came to light. Victoria Rickman's first marriage ended in a divorce, with both parties accusing each other of abuse. During the marriage, she had a son whom she adored. At the time of the divorce, he was 8 years old. Victoria's friends described her as a devoted mother and a kind person who was always willing to help others. A few years after the divorce, Victoria met William Carter, through work colleagues. William was a successful businessman and is a divorced man. At that time, Victoria worked as a marketing consultant. They often encountered each other at work and soon began a passionate romance. They were inseparable, doing everything together and appearing to be the perfect couple. However, over time, the relationship developed issues similar to those Victoria had experienced in her first marriage. After they got engaged and moved in together, Victoria discovered that things were not as perfect as she had hoped. William became possessive, insulted her, and was physically abusive. She repeatedly forgave him and they continued living together. It was a vicious cycle of a toxic relationship that she couldn't escape. Victoria's friends advised her to leave William, they warning that things would end badly if she stayed. Victoria said she endured psychological, physical, and sexual abuse, and she felt she had no ability to change her situation. She continued to endure and forgive his behavior. However, just before the tragedy, she found the strength to leave Then he began to harass her relentlessly. According to Victoria, that night, he broke into her house and attacked her, escalating their conflicts to a peak. He threatened to rape her, and although she resisted, but she couldn't overpower him due to his physical strength. For the first time, Victoria feared for her life, convinced that the night would end in death. Either hers or his. So, she defended herself by grabbing a gun and shooting him multiple times. Victoria's best friend fully supported her and was sure that she was in grave danger that night, otherwise, she would not have used a weapon. The friend knew there were family issues but did not think it could all end like this. The detectives decided to speak with William's family to hear their version and get a more complete picture of the relationship between Victoria and William. William's parents, who had just learned of what happened to their son, immediately denied that it was self-defense. They gave a completely different story about Victoria. The parents said they had warned their son about the dangers of such a toxic relationship. They disliked Victoria from the start because of her unpleasant personality, and they saw her as a threat to be avoided. A few weeks before the tragedy, another disturbing incident occurred during an argument between William and Victoria. His parents noticed he was bleeding and injured. He explained that Victoria had hit him on the head with a hammer and bit his back. His parents were shocked because the blow was severe and could have been fatal. They dreaded to think what might have happened if she had had a gun. Then William and Victoria separated again, and his parents hope they won't come back. He didn't press charges against she because she threatened to accuse him of rape. William's family said they often argued and these conflicts often progressed into fights. Sometimes Victoria attacked William, and sometimes he attacked her. During their 3 years their relationship was tumultuous. Victoria and William frequently reported each other to the police for issues ranging from domestic disputes to assaults. Police reports confirmed this pattern. She threatened to obtain a restraining order against he, while he threatened to have her jailed for making false accusations. A few days before William died, he and Victoria met, but the meeting did not end well. They argued, and William called 911 to request police assistance to evict Victoria from his home. When the police arrived, Victoria claimed that William had hit her, but they saw that she had no injuries. The police discovered that she had sent text messages to his phone with false accusations, claiming he had kidnapped her and threatened her, whereas he was simply asking her to leave him alone. The police helped she pack her belongings and escorted her out of his house. William told her he never wanted to see her again. Although Victoria promised not to bother him anymore, she did not keep her word. A few days later, Victoria began texting William, asking to meet, but he ignored her. She then devised a new plan and contacted his ex-wife, repeatedly harassing his ex-wife. The ex-wife complained to William about her behavior. This upset he, and he sent she a message. He said she are too dangerous to be around, and told her never to contact him or his ex-wife again. The conflict reignited. During another argument, he threatened to report her to the police because she attacked him with a hammer. Victoria was furious because she realized that this could threaten her custody of her beloved son. William's family believed this was the motive for the crime. The relationship between William and Victoria became increasingly complicated and confusing. Although Victoria alleged that she was raped by William, an autopsy found no signs of violence or internal trauma, shows that sexual intercourse was consensual. On her body, there were only 2 small bruises, one on her arm and one on her leg. These bruises appeared old and not the result of a recent struggle, as they were already fading. Her new manicure was intact without any broken nails and showed no signs of a struggle since there were no skin particles under her nails. Furthermore, William did not have any scratches, which was unusual. When the police arrived at the house, Victoria's appearance raised suspicions. While the room was covered in blood, she appeared clean. With no blood on her pajamas or body, and her hair was wet as if she had just showered. The police doubted Victoria's story and suspected her of killing William. Forensic experts thoroughly investigated the scene of the tragedy and concluded that Victoria's testimony was inaccurate. Evidence indicated that William was shot while standing with his back to Victoria. It was believed he was next to the bed, facing the window, when he was hit 3 times. One of the shots caused blood to fill his lungs, leading to a cough. The high blood spatter on the wall next to the window suggested that he was standing when shot. After coughing, he likely fell onto the bed, and Victoria continued shooting him, she firing several more shots into his chest and head. There were no signs of a struggle in the house, everything was neatly in place. This also contradicts Victoria's testimony that a struggle occurred. Victoria was detained and brought to the police station for questioning. Upon hearing she was accused of murdering William, her expression changed drastically, surprised by the accusation. When the police tried to collect her phone as evidence for examination, she tried to snatch it back furiously. This behavior seemed strange to the investigators. It seemed that she was hiding something on the phone and feared it would be discovered. Investigators examined the correspondence between Victoria and William, as well as their phones, revealing that William deeply loved her. He sent heartfelt messages, calling her the love of his life, but expressed concern about her actions. He feared her false accusations might lead to his imprisonment. Subsequent messages from William show a marked change in tone. The investigation uncovered that Victoria had sent herself a threatening message from William's phone to incriminate him. Further evidence showed that Victoria had attacked William on at least 2 occasions, yet she called the police and claimed he attacked her. Victoria threatened to smear her neighbor Plunkett when he tried to evict her from the flat. Victoria Rickman was charged with first-degree murder and held without bail. She finally stood trial for the murder of William Carter in August 2017, after spending almost 4 years in jail. Once a vibrant and attractive woman, famous for her beautiful appearance, Victoria appeared completely different and almost unrecognizable in court. Several men testified about how skillfully she had manipulated them during flirtations, causing them to become infatuated with her and willing to do anything for her. Even some police officers admitted they were captivated by Victoria's beauty and flirtatious behavior when she responded to complaints of domestic violence, make them side with her. These officers later regretted their lack of impartiality. A prime example of Victoria's manipulation was her relationship with Deputy Sheriff Colby County Price. She reported threats from William to him. Upon seeing bruises on her body, he entrusted her with one of his personal pistols for self-defense. This same pistol was used in the shooting of William. Additionally, the deputy sheriff took Victoria to a shooting range and taught her how to use a gun, and she developed her shooting skills expertly. After William was murdered, Victoria first called Cuba Price and then, on his advice, she called 911. During the trial, Cuba Price admitted he was captivated by Victoria, despite being married at the time. He thought their relationship might evolve, but denied having an affair, stating they were just friends. By the trial, he no longer worked at the sheriff's office and was instead an instructor at the Air Force Base. He had been fired 5 days after William's death for not cooperating with the investigation, as he protected and defended Victoria. The charges alleged that Victoria used her charm to entice William to her home on that tragic night. Sadly, William could no longer share his side of the story, so the prosecutor presented it on his behalf. According to the prosecutor, Victoria called William that evening, inviting him over with the promise of intimacy, thereby luring him into a trap. Once he arrived, she allegedly took advantage of the situation and killed him in cold blood by shooting him 9 times. The prosecutor argued that shooting him 9 times was excessive. Her decisive actions suggested premeditation, leading the prosecutor to conclude that it was a planned murder. Additional evidence supported this conclusion. At the time of the murder, Victoria was living with another man, Andrew, in his house. That night, she asked Andrew to stay at his mother's house so she could be alone and get a good night's sleep. Trusting her, Andrew agreed and went to his mother's. Just half an hour after he left, Victoria contacted William, and he arrived at her house after midnight. It's unclear what she said to him on the phone, but it's presumed she invited him over. There were no signs of forced entry. Victoria herself opened the door for William. He did not break into her home and was unaware of her address until she gave it to him during the call. During the trial, the doctor who examined Victoria after the murder testified, and photos of Victoria were presented. The doctor stated that he found no injuries on her body, including any defensive wounds or fresh bruises. It appeared she had not been raped, as their relationship was consensual. Notably, a bruise on her hand, which she claimed was from a fight with he, was visible in a selfie taken the day before his murder, proving it was unrelated to self-defense. Photographs from the crime scene were also shown at the trial. William's naked body, with multiple gunshot wounds, was found lying face up on the bed. His clothes were on the floor next to the bed, his watch was neatly placed on the nightstand, and he held a gold chain in his left hand. It seemed he was disturbed while dressing, and when he tried to refasten his necklace, he was shot. An expert confirmed that William was shot from behind, indicating he posed no threat to Victoria. An autopsy revealed that William was shot 9 times. 4 times in the chest, 3 in the back, and twice in the head. He also had bruises on his chin and left hand, likely caused by a blunt object. Blood spatters were found on the wall, curtains, and pillows on the floor. The medical examiner suggested that William was facing the window when he was first shot in the back, fell onto the bed, and was then shot the remaining times. During the trial, questions were raised about the reloading of the pistol. The pistol can only hold 12 rounds, yet 9 spent cartridges were found at the scene, leaving 4 bullets in the pistol. This totals 13 bullets, leading the prosecution to conclude that Victoria had reloaded the pistol. If she reloaded, the act could not be deemed as self-defense, as reloading shows premeditation. At the trial, a neighbor named Plankett testified that Victoria had previously threatened him when he attempted to evict her from her apartment. She threatened to accuse him of rape, causing him to back down to avoid trouble. Victoria had filed multiple rape complaints against different men, but no criminal cases were initiated because there was no evidence beyond her claims. The prosecution found it suspicious that all the men around her were accused of rape. The lawyer argued that Victoria was a vulnerable and defenseless woman in life. She had suffered violence from both her first husband and William, her fiancé. On the night of the incident, William broke into her house, assaulted, and raped her, then threatened her life. To protect herself, she used a firearm provided by her friend, the deputy sheriff. The lawyer asserted that this was clearly a case of self-defense. The defense stated that William arrived at Victoria's house intoxicated and under medication. A doctor testified that 3 days before his death, William reported experiencing delirium and was prescribed antipsychotics to aid his sleep. The lawyer also suggested he might have used illegal drugs that night, causing his aggression. However, it remains unknown whether he was intoxicated or on drugs that night, as no toxicology test was conducted. Dr. Chris Lees Perry, the former Georgia chief medical examiner, testified for the defense, indicating that Victoria first shot William in the chest, not the back. During the trial, Victoria's 911 call was played, and the lawyer stressed that the emotions she expressed were genuine and couldn't be faked. She sounded truly desperate. Victoria's best friend testified for the defense, stating that she had seen bruises on Victoria before, which Victoria claimed were caused by William. However, the friend never witnessed any violent incidents and couldn't confirm the bruises were from William. She did recall overhearing William yelling at Victoria on the phone once. Seeing Victoria's distress during that call convinced her that Victoria was a victim of domestic violence and not capable of murder. She believed Victoria acted in self-defense. The defense also highlighted William's troubled past. He had struggled with substance abuse and had been arrested several times for property damage. After 10 years of marijuana use, he went to rehab. William's parents confirmed this thing, but they said that he had overcome his addiction, rebuilt his life, and started a business. They were proud of his recovery and believed that Victoria was his last obsession. They felt that whenever she called, he would rush to her without realizing the potential danger. The prosecution presented a dramatic video recorded on Victoria's mobile phone 4 months before William's death. In the video, she threatened to call the police and accused him of rape after he kicked her out. She acted aggressively, trying to enter the house, but he prevented her. She responded that he could not tell her what to do and that she had a gun and knew how to use it. Her behavior did not seem like that of a typical victim of violence. The conversation concluded as William expressing that Victoria was frightening him, saying he did not want to see her anymore, and then leaving. The prosecution believed something similar occurred on the night of the incident, but with a tragic ending. At the trial, the jury heard 2 different yet plausible stories. They now had to decide which side was more convincing, its self-defense or premeditated murder. The jury reached a verdict in less than an hour, finding Victoria Rickman guilty. She sat silently, devastated by the decision, and cried. She addressed the judge, saying that she believed the jury was wrong. "Thank you for explaining the facts of this case. I am a mother whose son was taken from me." She describes herself as a battered woman who endured years of abuse and suffered nightmares and post-traumatic stress disorder from trying to defend herself. Victoria continued to deny her guilt and showed no remorse for shooting William. As a result, the judge was not lenient and sentenced Victoria to life in prison without parole. Her lawyer was also shocked by the verdict and sentence, considering them unfair. He believed the evidence was circumstantial and unconvincing, and that she deserved the possibility of parole and a more lenient sentence. Victoria is appealing and hopes her case will be reviewed, but so far her requests have been denied. William's daughter is being raised by his mother, and Victoria's son is being raised by her ex-husband. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Solomon family. Angela grew up in a religious family in Nashville, USA. She was talented in singing and excelled academically. Then, she earned a doctorate in pharmacy and was successful in her career, which allowed her to earn a good income. She bought a house and lived a fulfilling life. In 2001, she reconnected with Aaron Solomon, a charismatic guy she had known since school. He was a sports presenter on a TV channel and made a good impression on her. The couple started dating, and just a few months later, Angela became pregnant with a son. In 2002, their first child was born, named Grant. Immediately after that, Aaron proposed to Angela, but their relationship was complicated, and she was unsure about marriage. She initially planned to raise the child on her own. However, her religious family pressured her to marry, and she eventually agreed. Aaron turned out to be a caring father and loving husband, and their relationship improved. For years after their wedding, in October 2006, they welcomed a daughter named Gracie. Grant, who was 4 years old at the time, was thrilled to have a younger sister. He stayed by her crib and helped his mother with her care. Then, he began playing baseball and became a successful player on his school team, gaining popularity among his peers. After the birth of Gracie, the parents' relationship worsened. Aaron was a controlling and possessive man who insulted his wife and children while having multiple affairs. He used his status as a presenter to start many affairs. In 2013, 7 years old, Gracie told her mother that her father was bothering her during bath time. It was discovered that Aaron had prohibited his wife from bathing their daughter, insisting on doing it himself, and even filmed his daughter without clothes. Angela forbade Aaron from bathing or touching their daughter. Although he admitted to his actions, he threatened Angela, warning that he would take their children away if Angela told anyone. As an active church member, he demanded complete obedience from his family, so Angela felt compelled to remain silent. Angela finds out that Aaron has cheated on many other girls and learned he was molesting minors. In 2014, explicit photos of minors were found on his phone, but the incident was covered up and he lost his job. However, then he found a new job as a financial consultant at a large bank. The couple began to argue more often. Angela wanted a divorce, but Aaron refused and suggested they see a family psychologist. Angela agreed, and during therapy, it was revealed that she had been dealing with victim syndrome throughout her life. Her parents had been harsh, imposing their religious beliefs on her, and she had entered an unfortunate marriage with Aaron, who was narcissistic and struggled with sexual addiction. The sessions didn't help with their family problems. Angela found another psychologist she trusted and shared all the details of her life and family issues. She started considering a plan to leave Aaron, who was controlling and wouldn't let her go. She kept notes on her phone and communicated with the psychologist via email. However, Aaron was secretly listening to her therapy sessions, checking her phone and email, and was aware of all her plans. She complained to her parents about Aaron's troubling behavior, but they didn't support her. They sided with he, believing, due to their faith, that a woman should endure her husband's behavior and keep the household intact. She felt unsupported by everyone. Aaron's behavior deteriorated, and he started to become violent towards his wife and children. The children, wanting to protect their mother, they began sleeping in the same room out of fear of their father. One day, Aaron attacked Angela in the bathroom, attempting to strangle her with a hairdryer cord. She was ready to say goodbye to life when her 11-year-old son, Grant, intervened and managed to stop his father. Terrified, she and the children chose not to tell anyone about the incident and did not report Aaron to the police. However, he called 911, falsely claiming that she had tried to end your life using the cord. She was then hospitalized for psychiatric evaluation, despite asserting that she was mentally sound. Eventually, doctors reassured her that she was indeed healthy. Angela's psychotherapist learned about her situation and shared their correspondence, explaining that Angela was a victim of domestic violence. Angela was discharged from the hospital on May 11, 2013, and was advised to obtain a restraining order against her husband. Medical records confirmed she was not depressed, had no end-your-life thoughts, no history of mental health issues. However, she was indeed a victim of domestic violence and was in a dangerous situation. After her release, Angela was determined to secure a restraining order against her husband and file for divorce. Upon returning home, she found the house empty. She attempted to contact Aaron, but he did not respond. She also tried calling her own parents and his parents, but received no answer. Her relatives dismissed her as mentally ill and ignored her. The next day, May 12, was Mother's Day. Angela hoped Aaron would bring the children to visit her, but instead, the police arrived at her house. He had falsely reported to 911 that she was attempting to end her life. The police checked on her, but they found no cause for concern and left. Time passed, and Angela received a restraining order but still did not know where the children were. She contacted the police several times, asking them to locate the children, but they refused to take her statement because the children were with their father, Darren, who had the legal right to have them. He had not kidnapped them. She soon discovered that he had filed for divorce first and had obtained a restraining order against her. He claimed she was a danger to him and the children. Divorce proceedings began, and both his parents and her parents spoke against her. As a result, he was granted full custody of the children. And the court ordered she to pay child support. The children were not present in court and were not asked with whom they wanted to stay. The judge noted that she had been in a mental hospital, which was enough to deny her custody claims. She couldn't do anything about her children. Angela continued to live with her father and fought hard to challenge the guardianship, arguing that the children were not well with Aaron. A retrial for the guardianship case was scheduled. He hired top lawyers for the case, having recently received a large inheritance from a wealthy aunt who had passed away. During the trial, Angela's relatives once again testified against her, alleging she was intent to end her life. However, this time, psychotherapists and staff from the psychiatric hospital defended her. They confidently stated that she was a victim of Aaron's abusive behavior and had never attempted to end her life. Her injuries were inflicted by her husband. Despite this, the judge ignored their testimony and awarded full custody to Aaron. Angela did not give up and repeatedly challenged the custody decision, eventually securing the right to see her children for 2 hours a week. When she finally saw them, she was shocked by their condition. Both Grant and Gracie had lost weight, and Gracie had severe bruises under her eyes. Aaron disciplined them harshly, using physical violence, enforcing a strict diet, and banning unhealthy and sweet foods. Grant once jumped out of a moving car to escape from his father and was injured. The children were told by their father that their mother, Angela, was dead when she was actually placed in a mental hospital. He also said it was unsafe there, so they needed to move. The children believed their father at the time because they saw their mother in a bad state after being strangled and felt hopeless, thinking no one could help them. Angela fought to gain full custody of the children, which required her to undergo a psychiatric examination to prove her mental health. She passed the examination successfully. In 2014, the court increased Angela's child visitation rights to 6 hours per week, but kept the children with their father. She continued her legal battle. In early 2015, Angela received devastating news. Aaron had been raping 9-year-old Gracie for several months. The frightened girl felt she couldn't tell anyone. She described feeling sleepy and falling asleep after eating. Then she wake up in her father's bed with severe pain in her crotch and bruises on her thighs. She didn't know how the bruises got there. Her father, Aaron, claimed it was a rash from her bathing suit, but she knew that wasn't true. He never took them to the doctor, fearing exposure, even when they were very sick. Gracie recounted how Aaron beat them, drove recklessly to scare them, and neglected their basic needs. Angela was horrified by this information and tried to use it to gain custody of the children from Aaron, their abusive father, awaiting a new trial. In April 2015, Aaron filed a complaint against Angela for not paying child support, leading to her arrest. She argued that Aaron was not properly caring for the children and was using the child support money for himself and his lovers, despite having inherited wealth. Angela was later released and continued to pay child support. She fought for her children for several more years, reporting Aaron to law enforcement, contacting his church, and warning the church school about the danger he posed. However, no one took her seriously, and everyone thought she was crazy. In 2018, Grant and Gracie ran away from home. Aaron immediately contacted the police, and the children were found quickly. When they returned, Aaron punished them harshly. Angela, upon discovering this, requested an emergency custody hearing due to Aaron's abusive behavior. On August 17, 2018, during Grant's baseball tournament, Aaron and Gracie came to watch the match. After the match, Aaron took Gracie with him, while Grant stayed at the sports camp. Aaron rented a hotel room with only one bed for the night. Despite 12-year-old Gracie's request for a room with 2 beds, Aaron raped her that night. The following day, on August 18, an emergency custody hearing took place. Gracie disclosed what her father had done, but Aaron's lawyer denied the allegations, suggesting that Gracie imagined the incident and arguing that Aaron, being a loving father, couldn't have committed such an act. Later, Grant testified that his father was abusive, beat him, fed him poorly, humiliated him, and forced him to train all day. Both children expressed their desire to live with their mother, not their father. However, the judge did not believe them. He concluded that Angela and the children were lying to damage Aaron's reputation because Aaron attended the same Grace Church as the judge and a senator, where he was well regarded. This was a closed, deeply religious community. Aaron attended church every Sunday, never missing an event, and was well regarded by the community's elite. People couldn't believe that Aaron was capable of such monstrous behavior. And there is no evidence that he abused the children. The judge dismissed Angela's request for custody. During the trial, Gracie clung to her mother and was reluctant to leave with her father. However, when her father threatened to call the police, she had no choice but to go with him. The mother lost custody rights, but the children were unable to stay with their father either. Gracie and Grant sought help from school staff, a psychologist, and the church, sharing the terrible things their father had done to them. However, the principal called them in and urged them to remain silent to protect both their and their father's reputations. Despite their efforts to explain why they didn't want to return home, the principal dismissed their claims, saying he had heard it all before and didn't believe them. He contacted their father, who then removed them from school. Nobody believed the children, as everyone thought Angela had coerced them into falsely accusing their father. One day, Gracie and Grant couldn't take it anymore and ran to their mother, Angela. Then, Aaron came to look for them and asked them to return. Grant and Gracie refused, and he allowed them to live temporarily with their mother. With the help of therapy, they set boundaries, and their father began to respect them. Grant and Gracie sometimes had to live with their father, as he still had more custody rights, but most of the time they lived with their mother. During those times, they were happy, and the relationship with their father became more tense and reached its peak. On July 20, 2020, 18-year-old Grant was driving to his training, which was about an hour away from Angela's house. Upon arriving at the parking lot, a tragic accident occurred in which Grant lost his life. His father, Aaron, who was also at the training, witnessed the incident. He immediately called 911 for help for his son. Aaron later recounted the event. Aaron explained that he had exited his pickup truck to retrieve his gear from the back. While standing in the parking lot near the building, he was focused on his phone and did not notice the pickup rolling backwards. The vehicle hit him, dragging him several meters before it went down a deep ditch. Aaron, who was there with 3 others, saw everything unfold. When the police arrived, they found Grant lying on his back beneath the front of a car, but the tires were not touching him. Blood was streaming from his nose and ears. Using a jack, they managed to lift the car and pulled him out. He was still breathing, so they performed CPR and rushed him to the hospital. Unfortunately, despite their efforts, Grant, who was in serious condition, died on the way without regaining consciousness. Although he had multiple injuries, but the official cause of death was cardiac arrest. Strangely, Aaron accompanied him to the hospital and signed papers preventing an autopsy and organ donation. When Angela learned about the incident, she hurried to the hospital and requested an autopsy, but her pleas were ignored. The police classified the case as an accident and didn't pursue further investigation. Angela believed Aaron's account of the incident was false, pointing to various inconsistencies. Grant's injuries didn't match those of someone trapped under a car. He had no typical crushing injuries. The hospital recorded just one head injury and 3 bruises, on his jaw, left hip, and right hip. Aaron claimed Grant drove a pickup for about an hour to reach his training, yet there were no burn marks from a hot car, nor were there abrasions from being dragged on asphalt. At the scene of the tragedy, there was no blood, and Grant's shoes were completely clean, which contradicted Aaron's story. The grass near the car's exit and the path where the body was dragged were untouched. There weren't even tire tracks where they should have been. Instead, they were found on the other side of the sidewalk. Grant's glasses were discovered there too. He always wore his glasses because he had poor vision without them, shown in all his photos. So, how did his glasses end up on the sidewalk if he wasn't there? He was in the parking lot. Why didn't his glasses fall there when the car allegedly ran over him? According to Aaron, Grant had his back to the car and didn't see it coming when it moved in reverse. Strangely, Grant was found lying on his back under the car but in the opposite direction. How could his body have turned 180 degrees under the car? It seems impossible. Furthermore, how could the car back into the ditch and then get back up and out of the ditch? It was hard to believe. None of the people in the nearby buildings heard Grant's screams, which should have been heard during such an accident. Everything happened quietly, so no one saw or heard anything. There were no CCTV cameras, and the 3 guys Aaron mentioned on the call were not there either. Strangely, Aaron did not attempt to rescue his son from the car, even though Aaron was briefly with him. Aaron just watched as his son died. Grant never stored equipment in the back of the car. He always left his uniform on the back seat. The phone Aaron claimed Grant was using was never found. Although Grant always carried his phone with him and called his girlfriend every morning, he didn't call that day for some reason. There was no damage to the car. Even though the rear bumper of this car model is fragile and prone to breaking, it was intact. It would have been damaged in such a descent. There were no witnesses to this tragic accident. A man saw Aaron walking along the road shortly before the tragedy, in the parking lot. It's unclear what he was doing there, although Aaron claimed he arrived later. At his son's funeral, Aaron described his death as a divine act, leaving everyone surprised. People were shocked by Aaron's lack of emotion. He showed no grief for his son. Angela suspected that he may have hit their son with his car elsewhere and staged the accident by bringing their son to the location afterwards. There was confusion as to why the pickup truck unexpectedly rolled away, as it had been parked correctly and had no previous issues. It was speculated that the truck might have had a technical fault, and although Aaron initially suggested investigating it to sue the manufacturer for compensation, he eventually declined, which was out of character for him since he usually pursued financial gains. He continued to drive the truck without any concern for several months. Angela wanted to investigate the truck herself, but Aaron strongly opposed the idea and promptly sent the vehicle to the scrapyard. This was puzzling, as the truck was in excellent condition and could have been sold for a good price. Angela managed to locate the vehicle in spring 2021 and arranged for an independent examination. Experts concluded that the accident could not have occurred as Aaron had claimed. Angela then pushed for the investigation of the case, which had been closed, to be reopened. Grant had just turned 18, according to Angela, and he had always protected Gracies from their abusive father. He warned his father that as soon as he turned 18, he would go to court. He and his sister Gracie planned to formally free themselves from their father's control, believing the court would take them more seriously as adults. In Angela's opinion, Aaron feared this and decided to stop his son. Gracie was devastated by the loss of her beloved brother, who could protect her. On May 12, 2021, Gracie, then 14, uploaded an 18-minute video on YouTube in which she described her father, Aaron, as a monster. She claimed that he attempted to kill their mother, raped her, and physically abused both her and Grant, eventually killing Grant's. Gracie fears that her father might harm her now that her brother is gone. They are defenseless, and their father started harassing them. Despite a restraining order, Aaron continued to stalk she and begged her to return home, but she refused. She was granted legal protection, but her father ignored it and kept following her from school. Due to the school principal's friendship with he from church, they refused to enforce the restraining order. After this interview, Aaron once again complained that Gracie was being negatively influenced and turned against him. He persuaded she that she imagined everything and that her mother had suggested the idea of rape. Aaron filed a defamation lawsuit against Angela, gathering people who refuted the information in the video Gracie recorded. He claimed Angela demanded he give up custody and threatened him. Angela was determined to seek justice. At the trial, Aaron withdrew the lawsuit but is considering refiling with a new legal team. Angela and her daughter Gracie are striving for justice for Grant. Gracie prefers to live with her mother and not see her father. They launched a website and gathered support from many people after Grant's death. However, the pastor, the school principal, and other individuals denied any involvement. One of Grant's classmates mentioned that she, along with Gracie, asked the school administration to intervene and protect them from Aaron, but the school dismissed their request, saying it was beyond their responsibility. In Tennessee, there is a law requiring anyone who suspects child abuse to report it to the Department of Children. However, no one reported anything in this case. After Grant's death, students were not allowed to discuss the tragedy at school. Later, the pastor left the church, causing a significant split within the congregation. Currently, Aaron has not been charged with any crimes related to Grant, and he denies all accusations against him. Aaron's supporters occasionally post on social media, accusing Gracie and Angela of lying and behaving unchristianly. Angela and Gracie live together but are afraid of Aaron. Gracie aspires to become an FBI agent to help people through investigations. The tragic story of the Solomon family leaves behind many painful and unforgettable lessons about domestic abuse and violence, as well as society's indifference to victims. Through this story, we clearly see the need to protect children and vulnerable family members from abusive acts. At the same time, the importance of support from the community and authorities is also emphasized. Let's speak up together and protect the vulnerable so that no family has to endure such pain again. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lynn Hernan. In Wisconsin, USA, there is a small town with a population of around 15,000, located near Milwaukee. On October 3, 2018, the tranquility of this town was shattered when Jesse Kerchevsky, the caregiver for Lynn Hernan, called 911. Jesse reported finding 62-year-old Lynn. There was no sign of life in her apartment, sitting in a reclined position amid a mess of scattered medications. Jesse informed the dispatcher that Lynn had been experiencing severe stomach pains for several months, which had been worsening over time. This pain may have led Lynn to take a lethal dose of medications. When emergency services arrived, the doctors confirmed Lynn Hernan's death, which was presumed to be due to poisoning. It was essential to perform all necessary tests, including toxicology, to determine the cause of Lynn's death. They took her to the forensic experts' table, where blood was drawn, tissue samples were examined. And an unusual finding was thing, a very high level of tetrazole A. While this substance is found in certain drugs, none of the tablets located around a body contained it. As it turns out, tetrazolin is found in some eye drops sold without a prescription, which are used to relieve eye redness and inflammation. This is particularly useful for allergic reactions and mild eye fatigue, and a few drops are typically sufficient. While these eye drops are safe when applied to the eyes, they can be harmful and even dangerous if ingested, especially in large amounts. Ingesting a significant quantity can lead to serious consequences, including vomiting, internal bleeding, memory loss, and even death at high doses. This thing aligns with the nurse's description of the prolonged suffering from stomach pain experienced by Lynn. The medical examiner's court was alarmed by the unusual circumstances surrounding Lynn's death, as there are much less painful and quicker ways to die. At 62, she likely did not want to endure suffering for months before dying. It appeared that her pain was due to a gradual increase in tetrazolin levels in her blood. Based on this, the expert suggested that she might have been murdered. After reviewing the autopsy report, detectives concurred and initiated a criminal investigation. Lynn Ernon had no children and had outlived all her relatives. The first person police contacted to gather details about her death, even before the toxicology report was complete, was her nurse, 39-year-old Jessie Kerchevsky. Jessie had been caring for Lynn, who lived alone, for several years, and their relationship was described as friendly. Lynn saw Jessie not just as a nurse, but as a true confidant. About 5 years prior to the incident, Lynn struggled with both physical and mental health issues, including depression and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So she needed to be supervised, however, but no one in her family could help her. She dealt with several illnesses, but the most agonizing was her stomach pain. In the final months of her life, she could only consume soup due to intestinal problems. Jessie carefully overseen her diet and medication. Following the incident, Jessie was promptly called to the police station for questioning. Forensic experts were analyzing the body and gathering materials for a toxicology test. Initially, it seemed that police was simply obtaining information from Jessie. However, it quickly became clear that the situation was more complicated than it appeared. During the inquiry, both Jessie and her mother, Jennifer Flower, were present. Jessie's mother was worried because she believed her daughter might be in danger. She felt the detectives were overly focused on Jessie and might be trying to accuse her of murder. Ironically, her concerns only increased suspicion towards Jessie instead of alleviating it. The police tried to clarify with Jessie the cause that led to Lynn's tragic end. They questioned Jessie about why Lynn chose to end her life in such a dramatic manner. At this time, no one doubted Jessie's account. She genuinely believed Lynn had died by taking a lethal dose of drugs voluntarily. However, Jessie's behavior has made the police suspicious. Detectives were trying to determine if there were any underlying factors related to Lynn's death, such as a depressive state. They wondered if she had previously attempted to end her life and what could have caused the severe stomach pains she experienced. However, Jessie was unable to provide any answers. It appeared that she was not only grieving the loss of her employer but also withholding important information. Ultimately, Jessie was released due to a lack of evidence. The investigators were awaiting the official conclusions from a forensic expert following a toxicological examination. After the police became suspicious of Nurse Jennifer, they began to keep an eye on her mother, Jennifer. They interviewed Jennifer and learned that she had been a close friend of Lynn. She had helped her daughter, Jessie, secure a job with Lynn's home. Together, they provided care for Lynn, assisted Lynn in Lynn with age-related issues, care, and providing everything else needed. However, Jennifer also raised suspicions among the police. At this time, the toxicology results appear to be particularly worrying. Given Lynn's age and health issues, it was unlikely that she had been ingesting eye drops orally for an extended period. Investigators needed to figure out how such a large quantity of the drug ended up in her system. Experts indicated that a lethal dose of the substance would require at least 4 bottles, while the results suggested Lynn had consumed at least 6 bottles, which should have led to severe stomach cramps and pain before her death. Shortly after Lynn's death, an unusual situation arose. Jesse and Jennifer purchased a new, large, and expensive television, even though their income was modest. Additionally, the police found the car that Lynn had given to her nurse, Jesse, to be suspicious. Investigators noted the peculiar behavior of Jesse and Jennifer, which increasingly suggested that Lynn's death was not voluntary. Typically, criminals attempt to cover up their actions and hide evidence to evade justice, but this situation appeared to be different. Besides, Jesse and Jennifer showed no signs of grief. Instead, they seemed to revel in the inheritance, which deepened the suspicions against them. The police began to suspect that Jesse might have orchestrated the murder. Jennifer did not have regular access to Lynn's apartment, but Jesse visited Lynn almost daily, allowing her easy access to Lynn's food and medicine. Jesse insisted that she truly loved Lynn and wanted to help Lynn. The two had become like family. However, the detectives suspected that Lynn had made a serious mistake by allowing someone who could potentially harm her into her life. The suspects, Jesse and Jennifer, stayed attentive to the investigation, frequently calling the police station to check on the case's progress. The detectives realized that Jesse and Jennifer weren't genuinely concerned about what had happened. Rather, they were worried about being found out. Their behavior indicated they were closely monitoring the investigation. More evidence of Jesse and Jennifer's involvement and a thorough investigation were necessary to ensure justice. Jesse and her mother noticed that the police had taken a greater interest in their activities. During each visit to the station, Jesse felt compelled to defend herself. She said had a close relationship with Lynn and they treated each other like family. Jesse argued that any suspicions against her were baseless, insisting it was just a coincidence that she was a nurse and always in close contact with Lynn. Being a nurse did not make her a killer, but the detectives relied on more than just assumptions. Initially, Jesse did not mention on the increased levels of tetrazzolina found in Lynn's blood. However, when she was cornered, she revealed that Lynn frequently used these eye drops and might have applied them without realizing it. Jesse attributed this to Lynn's cognitive issues, which sometimes caused her to lose control over her actions. However, the police quickly identified a key witness named Andrew Pooh. Although he was not related to Lynn, he described their relationship as close and friendly. Lynn had lived with Andrew's family, and he saw Lynn as his grandmother, she even helping him financially during his college years. Since she had no children, Lynn wanted to leave Andrew an inheritance, but he declined to avoid any suspicion of wanting money. Despite his refusal, Lynn insisted on naming him as her heir since she had no other beneficiaries. However, they never had the chance to finalize this arrangement. According to Andrew, Lynn had proposed leaving him an inheritance between $10,000 and $50,000. He frequently visited Lynn and knew Jesse, her nurse. Andrew suspects that Lynn's death may have been related to Jesse's fear of losing her inheritance, especially since she knew that Lynn intended to leave her fortune to Andrew. After Lynn passed away, Jesse unexpectedly inherited all of Lynn's property, which raised suspicions. Andrew approached Jesse hoping to receive part of the inheritance, but she claimed that Lynn had many debts and hadn't paid her bills for a long time. As a result, Jesse said most of the inheritance would go towards settling those debts. This led Andrew decided to consult lawyers to verify this information. After that, Jesse got in touch and arranged to meet with Andrew. She gave him documents that she proved Lynn's debt had been repaid. After settling all debts, Jesse said she had only $26,000 left and offered to share it with Andrew. However, when the police investigated, they discovered that these documents were fake, created using a computer program. It turned out Jesse hadn't paid anyone. This discovery led investigators to take a closer look at Lynn's financial situation. They quickly learned that during her time as a nurse, Jesse had conducted suspicious transactions involving Lynn's finances. She applied for a loan to the bank, the application was approved, and as a result the loan was disbursed. Even though the loans were in Lynn's name, Jesse was the one who actually used the funds. Ultimately, it was revealed that over the years, she had taken out about $300 in loans, of which only $88 was left by the time of the police investigation. In response to the financial claims made by the police officers, Jesse maintained that she acted at Lynn's request. She stated that Lynn provided the necessary documents for the loans and frequently asked her to purchase eye drops. Jesse mentioned that she had 4 bottles on hand, which Lynn had given her, and noted that she saw Lynn using the product correctly. She insisted that she did not supervise this process. However, police were skeptical of her account. At the crime scene, there were no eye drop bottles found near the body. Instead, pills were littered around, and no traces of those pills were found in Lynn's body. Lynn was said to have kept her bottle of eye drops on her nightstand, but a thorough search of the apartment revealed they were missing. The situation became increasingly complicated, suggesting that someone had staged the scene. It appeared that it had been discarded to hide evidence. The forensic expert believed that Lynn had been ingesting the eye drops for an extended period, leading to poisoning, severe pain, and ultimately death. It seemed unlikely that Lynn could have used such a large quantity on her own. This indicates that someone has poisoned her. Jesse, who spent the most time with Lynn and managed her diet and medications, emerged as the primary suspect. Suspicious thing, the detectives did not contact Jesse or summon her for questioning. Instead, she frequently visited the police station to ask about the investigation's progress. Jesse maintained that she had no motive to harm Lynn and denied any involvement in financial fraud. However, the circumstances surrounding the drugs continued to trouble the investigators, who began to apply pressure on Jesse. She shared bizarre stories about how Lynn supposedly enjoyed mixing vodka with eye drops, claiming this gave Lynn extra enjoyment from the drink. Jesse insisted she was unaware that regular eye drops could be dangerous and viewed it as just one of Lynn's eccentric habits. Jesse stated that on that fateful morning, she brought 4 additional bottles of eye drops to the Lynn's apartment and claimed that Lynn even mixed them into her water. This situation continued for about 6 months until a tragic conclusion, making the story increasingly bizarre. Despite the circumstantial evidence gathered by investigators, detectives believed Jesse was fabricating excuses. Ultimately, they decided to arrest Jesse on suspicion of premeditated murder. Evidence from the crime scene, including Jesse's cell phone, was sent for analysis, which provided the police with more information. They discovered that Jesse was in regular contact with her boyfriend, Scott Craig. The conversations between Jesse and Scott particularly caught the attention of police. It became evident that Jesse's assertion of being unaware of the dangers of ingesting eye drops was untrue. She had been researching this information online for some time. By the time she started caring for Lynn, she was already knowledgeable about products containing the harmful substance, suggesting she had intentionally chosen medications that contained it in high amounts. Jesse first considered using eye drops as a way to poison Lynn because they could be easily purchased without a prescription. All she needed to do was persuade Lynn to take them orally or secretly mix them into Lynn's food or drink. Due to Lynn's cognitive difficulty, so this seemed simple. From Jesse and Scott's conversations, it seemed he was unaware that Jesse was attempting to poison Lynn. However, a few months before the incident, a conversation revealed that Jesse had mentioned Lynn's serious illness, including episodes of vomiting blood, which led to Lynn being hospitalized. Doctors later reported that she had been poisoned. The investigation showed that Jesse must have known the consequences of her actions. The police looked into Scott's potential involvement and brought him in for questioning. He denied any knowledge of the poisoning plan but claimed that Jesse had informed him about Lynn's previous poisonings. Scott viewed Jesse as a pathological liar, and their relationship was close to ending. He thought Jesse fabricated the poisoning story to gain his sympathy and reconcile with him. During another conversation in September, Jesse claimed Lynn was hospitalized and on medication, stating that Lynn is in intensive care and is on life support machines. In reality, Lynn had already passed away. Scott was fed up with the relationship and wanted to end it that day. However, Jesse attempted to manipulate him again by claiming that Lynn was in the hospital, hoping to elicit his sympathy. She was trying to hold on to their relationship. The situation was complicated. Was it a fatal overdose or a carefully planned scheme to obtain an inheritance? It turns out there was a clear motive in Jesse's actions. Over time, motivation will reveal itself. It is possible that Lynn found out about this, leading to her murder. Jesse then took possession of Lynn's property and money. Additionally, Jesse was desperate to keep her relationship with Scott, who had mentioned breaking up multiple times. Jesse concealed the true state of Lynn's, creating a web of lies that made it hard to uncover the truth. Investigators found that Jesse refused to admit her guilt. She maintained that Lynn consumed 100 liters of vodka daily and added eye drops to it. In October 2023, the investigation revealed the full extent of Jesse's financial fraud. It was found that since 2016, Lynn's credit limit had increased from almost zero to $72,000. This was just the beginning. After her death, nearly $16,000 was stolen from her apartment, which was allegedly used to pay off some debts. Jesse claimed she only repaid loans that were in Lynn's name, but the source of these funds was traced. The total debts amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars, taken out from banks under Lynn's name. Additionally, items worth $155 were stolen from Lynn's home. Initially, these items were reported missing, but it was later discovered that Jesse started receiving money in her accounts shortly thereafter, likely from the sale of Lynn's possessions. Lynn was a wealthy single woman who rarely used credit cards or loans. Additionally, the sudden rapid increase in debt that shortly after she hiring a new nurse, Jesse, seemed suspicious. Reports indicated that Jesse visited the casino every month, gambling large amounts with her boyfriend Scott, who didn't question where the money was coming from. They often went to gambling establishments at least twice a month. The investigation revealed that Jesse had a prior criminal record. Despite being young, she had a significant history of offenses, including document forgery, fraud, and gambling. Since 2010, Jesse struggled with a severe gambling addiction. In February of that year, she defrauded two individuals out of $4,000 by taking out loans in their names. Although she didn't use fake documents, it was shown that she obtained these funds through deceitful methods. By April 2010, she had lost over $45,000. During this time, she borrowed an additional $2,500 and applied for a loan exceeding $6,000, falsely claiming that her mother, Jennifer, had approved it by using her mother's documents. This was, of course, a lie. Jesse managed to secure over $6,500 in credit using her mother's car as collateral, but she never repaid this amount. As a result, her mother nearly lost her car and had to gather a large amount of documentation to prove that she was not responsible for those loans. Jesse was imprisoned for 2 years but was released early due to good behavior. Her mother stated that she struggled with a severe gambling addiction. The prosecutor's office claimed that 25-year-old Jesse committed premeditated murder to gain financial benefits from her victim, Lynn. By doing so, she attempted to eliminate her own debts. It is alleged that she killed Lynn, who had endured pain and progressive for years, without considering the consequences. Jesse described the act as one of mercy, said that she could no longer bear to see Lynn suffer. The lawyers argued that Jessie did not kill Lynn. They explained that Lynn had cognitive impairments and did not understand the risks of type of eye drops she was taking. They stated that Lynn believed that drinking vodka mixed with eye drops would help her sleep better, leading her to use the drops without realizing the danger. According to the prosecution, on the day of the murder, Jessie provided Lynn with water that contained the contents of 6 eye drop bottles. However, the lethal dose was only 1 bottle. In court, both Jessie and Jennifer testified that Lynn consumed the water with the 6 bottles of drops. Initially, Jessie, who was a nurse, advised Lynn against using the drops, but after a lengthy argument, Jessie eventually relented, unaware of the severe outcomes that could result. Afterward, Jessie left for a few hours on business, not knowing how much of the substance Lynn had actually consumed or how it would affect her. Especially since Lynn had previously been hospitalized for poisoning from the drops. Lynn was aware of the dangers associated with eye drops, which made the idea of her accidental poisoning implausible. Jessie also knew about the harmful effects of these substances, and a key point against her was that no bottles of the eye drops were found near Lynn's body. It was evident that someone assisted Lynn in taking the medicine. The trial was intense and emotional, with the judge actively engaging in discussions. On November 14, 2023, the jury convicted Jessie of first-degree murder, theft, and concealment of evidence. Upon hearing the verdict, Jessie broke down in tears. She was sentenced to life in prison but could be eligible for parole after 40 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lacey Fletcher. Lacey Fletcher was born on November 25, 1985, and spent her childhood and much of her life in Louisiana. She was the only child of Sheila and Clay Fletcher. Her father worked for a non-profit organization focused on the American Civil War, while her mother had previously served as an assistant prosecutor and worked for the mayor. The family was well respected in their community and had strong religious beliefs, but they also harbored dark secrets. In 1995, the Lacey moved to a larger home in Slaughter, Louisiana, a small town where everyone knows one another. Lacey's early years appeared normal. She was a sweet and cheerful child. After the move, she enrolled in a Baptist school, continuing her education until high school. However, she faced challenges with concentration and connecting with her peers, which made her school experience difficult and resulted in very few friends. Despite these struggles, she remained kind and maintained a smile. After finishing 9th grade, Lacey was homeschooled due to multiple health issues. She had been facing challenges since early childhood, with doctors later diagnosing her with autism spectrum disorder and social anxiety disorder. Lacey struggled with these conditions for most of her life. Her parents believed they could find solutions to her problems, but they were unaware of the tragic fate that awaited their daughter. In the early hours of January 3, 2022, at around 2 a.m., Sheila called the rescue service, 911, to report that her daughter was not breathing. During the call, the dispatcher guided her on how to perform first aid. Sheila followed the instructions for artificial respiration, making desperate attempts to save her child. However, Sheila was in a panic and couldn't even answer the question about her daughter's age right away. She mistakenly said Lacey was 31, even though she was actually 36. When the medics and police arrived at the house, they found Lacey lifeless, lying on a leather sofa. This was just the start of a series of shocking revelations. Although the house looked decent from the outside, a terrible stench emanated from the doorway. At 3:07 a.m., police entered Lacey's room. The surroundings were in a frightening state of disarray, filled with insects and rodents. Sheila's was so wretched that it was hard to determine Lacey's age. Her parents were unsure but believed she was 31. She was eventually identified as a young woman thought to be between 24 and 48 years old. It appeared she had spent an extensive amount of time sitting on the couch, creating a shape resembling a crater. This indentation had collected dirt and waste, and she had remained nearly immobile in that spot. The room was filled with a horrendous odor, a mix of excrement and urine along with waste from the insects and rodents. Lacey's condition suggested that she had been in this place for an extended period. Her legs were curled beneath her due to the accumulation of waste, and her limbs were severely decayed, nearly to the bone. The police noted deep ulcers and signs of possible tissue infection on her body, which was very dirty. Her hair was severely tangled, indicating it hadn't been washed or combed in a long time. Additionally, her face was marked with red spots that were difficult to identify at first glance. An autopsy revealed that Lacey's stomach contained only candy and foam and residue from cleaning products. Similar foam and liquid were found on the sofa, along with evidence that Lacey may have tried to eat the cleaning products because she was hungry. Next to the sofa was a gray chest of drawers with a pile of neatly folded clothes. The room also contained a portable toilet and a black chair a few meters away from the sofa, which contained various medical supplies, talcum powder, and bottles. According to police, the girl's death was the result of neglect of her health. Police believe Lacey did not receive the proper care she needed and was unable to care for herself due to her physical or mental health issues. The medical examiner identified a number of health issues, including severe chronic ulcers, bone infections, malnutrition, and sepsis. These conditions led to Lacey's tragic and painful death. After investigation and discussion with her parents, it was discovered that Lacey had been sitting on the same couch for approximately 12 years. After her death, her mother posted on social media, "Mom and Dad love you so much." On January 18, 2022, Clay and Sheila were interviewed by police. They explained that Lacey's problems began long ago due to her health issues. Initially, Lacey refused to leave the house, then her room, eventually moving to the living room, where she found the most comfort. To accommodate her needs, her parents renovated the room, bought a large leather sofa, installed a toilet, and provided her with everything she needed to care for her. They brought her food and care, but her condition continued to deteriorate. Lacey became increasingly afraid to leave the couch, forcing her to urinate on herself or on the floor, sometimes using a towel. During the summer, her mental health continued to decline. Although her parents suggested moving to a psychiatric clinic, Lacey resisted the idea and chose to stay in her room. Lacey's parents maintained that she never complained about her health problems over the years, even as her injuries worsened. Sheila herself maintained that Lacey had not been neglected or harmed. Her mother maintained that Lacey had always been under the care of a doctor. However, when police spoke to the doctor, they discovered that Lacey had not seen a doctor since 2010. She did not report any pain or health problems, and the doctor did not visit her at home, leaving him unaware of her true condition. In fact, Lacey last visited the medical center in 2010. Although Lacey needed to be hospitalized, her parents refused, saying she did not want to go there. After that, Lacey's health rapidly declined. Her parents said that, in the fall of 2021, Lacey began to have nutritional problems and began to eat significantly less. On the evening of the incident, around 10 p.m., Sheila checked on her daughter before going to bed and found Lacey unresponsive. She had fallen to her left side with her legs crossed under her body and was no longer able to straighten her body. After the police arrived, they suspected that the parents had acted inappropriately. They believed that Sheila and Clay deliberately left their daughter on the couch, ignoring her needs and failing to seek medical help. For 12 years, she suffered and lived in her own waste until her death on January 3, 2022. In May 2022, Clay Fletcher, 65, and his wife Sheila, 64, were charged with second-degree murder. The couple was arrested but later released on bail, returning to the same house where Lacey had endured terrible suffering for more than a decade. This decision sparked significant controversy. The judge justified it by stating that the parents had no prior criminal record and posed a low flight risk. Thus, they were allowed to await trial in the community. In early 2023, the court dropped the charges, but prosecutors continued to seek a connection between Lacey's death and her parents' neglect. The prosecutor argued for second-degree murder charges, claiming they did nothing to help their daughter. Lacey's parents were her main caregivers, responsible for her well-being. On June 19, 2023, they faced new charges for the same offenses. They were arrested but quickly released on bail. This incident gained significant attention in the local community and received extensive media coverage. Journalists reached out to the parents, who shared the emotional pain they had experienced for years while witnessing their daughter's depression, feeling helpless to change her situation. Police suspect that Sheila and Clay's statements were an attempt to portray themselves as grieving parents to avoid legal consequences. Under state law, they could face second-degree murder charges, which could result in life in prison depending on the circumstances. Police believe the couple's actions contributed to Lacey's death. People started noticing that Lacey showed clear signs of autism, which was later confirmed by medical professionals. As a result, her development began to lag behind that of her peers. By the time she reached 17 or 18 years old, she occasionally invited friends over to watch children's cartoons. However, her childlike interests caused her social circle to shrink over time. Around 2007, Lacey stopped going outside altogether. During this time, one of the neighbors became concerned and asked her parents about her situation. Sheila, Lezia's mother, reassured the neighbor that everything was fine. Nevertheless, due to Lacey's condition, she was reluctant to go outside and tried to avoid strangers. After this conversation, the neighbor did not bring it up again. The situation began to deteriorate quickly around 2010 when Lacey became largely inactive and even soiled her living area. Officers reported feeling an overwhelming disgust, which they described as the worst they had ever experienced. The foul smell in the Fletcher home was so overwhelming that one officer could not eat normally for nearly a week after responding to the incident. The stench lingered in his mind. This reaction was particularly surprising because the detective had dealt with very gruesome cases in his career, including investigations into killers who sold body parts. He stated that Lezia's living conditions were far worse than anything he had ever encountered. While the Lacey claimed they had long adjusted to and lived peacefully in such an atmosphere, those who knew the family never saw any unusual behavior from their parents. For years, the couple seemed like a typical family struggling with the hardships of their sick daughter. Although some witnesses described them as somewhat reserved, no one suspected that they were deliberately letting their daughter's condition worsen. This led to questions about the girl's health in isolation, with some even suspecting underlying mental health issues. Her parents claimed that doctors had diagnosed their daughter with locked-in syndrome, a rare condition that leaves a person almost completely paralyzed except for eye movement. Patients suffering from this disorder are entirely bedridden and reliant on caregivers, yet they can still feel everything and communicate through their eyes. Strangely, there was no such diagnosis recorded in Lacey's medical files, despite her parents' claims. The girl was only diagnosed with social anxiety disorder and autism spectrum disorder. There was no evidence of locked-in syndrome, but that doesn't explain why Lacey spent years on the couch. Additionally, foam from a hygiene product was found in her stomach, suggesting she could feed herself but didn't appear to be fed. This begs the question, if Lacey's parents really wanted her dead, why did they call the emergency services? Furthermore, they didn't bother to clean the house to hide any signs of neglect. The situation seems absurd. Many neighbors did not even know they had a daughter. The mother and father had the opportunity to discreetly dispose of her body without raising any suspicion. No one looked for her, as she had no friends due to her significant developmental delay. Despite the apparent apathy surrounding the Lacey family, they chose to contact the police rather than dispose of any evidence, allowing police to investigate the room where Lacey had been suffering for years. From the start, Sheila and Clay denied any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, the police focused their investigation on proving that the parents were responsible for Lacey's suffering. But did they intentionally create an environment where Lacey was locked in her own room? The poor living conditions and the parents' calm demeanor raised suspicions. Furthermore, why would Lacey use sanitary products and lick foam off a dirty couch if she wasn't hungry? Police interpreted this as evidence that Lacey had been starved, while her parents insisted that her actions were due to mental health issues. Sheila and Clay told police that Lacey did not want to communicate or share her struggles with others. This could be seen as an attempt to avoid bothering strangers about her troubles. They claimed that Lacey had been dealing with various health issues for years, a sensitive subject that most people would rather keep private. The prosecutor's office suspected that the villains deliberately hid information and mocked Lacey without intervention. The victim had never complained about pain, likely feeling embarrassed in front of the police. Forensic experts found severe ulcers on her limbs, with flesh rotting down to the bones, which would have caused her intense, constant pain. Under such conditions, she would have been unable to endure the pain without strong medication. However, her parents claimed they never heard her complain, and the neighbors had not noticed any sounds coming from the Lacey household. The lack of noise is understood to be due to the distance between the two homes. Forensic experts have found discrepancies in the parents' accounts. They claim to have discovered their daughter's death at night and contacted the police immediately, but the medical examiner later determined that she had been dead for more than a day. Despite these discrepancies, the parents continued to refer to their daughter's disability and denied any role in the alleged abuse. Sheila told police that she frequently entered her daughter's room in the mornings to care for her by treating her wounds, feeding her, and looking after her. However, this claim was proven false since no food was found in Lacey's stomach. Sheila explained that she tried to keep the room clean but struggled because Lacey was uncommunicative. Her testimony contradicts the medical examiner's report on the time of death. This raises important questions about motive. If the parents were truly guilty, why did they call the police? Why did they subject their daughter and themselves to years of torture while living in such horrific conditions? Police believe that the mother and father might not fully grasp the seriousness of their daughter's mental health issues. The parents insisted on maintaining Lacey's common sense and cognitive abilities, despite the medical professionals' warnings that, due to her identified disorders, Lacey couldn't fully understand her circumstances. Some have suggested that Clay and Sheila may have suffered from mental disorders that made it difficult for them to understand their actions. However, they were well-respected members of the local community and had not aroused suspicion up to that point. Witnesses did not describe them as having such problems, and it was unusual for three family members to suffer from mental illness at the same time. Sheila's defense attorney initially succeeded in getting the charges against her dismissed. However, the charges were refiled on June 19, 2023. On February 1, 2024, the district attorney announced that Clay and Sheila would plead guilty to manslaughter. On February 5, the prosecution decided to seek the maximum sentence of 40 years in prison. A hearing was scheduled for March 20th. A key moment in the hearing was the testimony of the police who were the first to arrive at the scene. They described seeing Lacey Fletcher in a horrific scene. They described the smell as a horrifying mix of rotting flesh and human and animal waste. The parents, who should have been protecting Lacey, transformed their home into a nightmarish environment. Lacey's legs were bent under her body and remained in that position for an extended period, leading to not only decay in her flesh but also stiffness in her muscles and ligaments. Just imagine the pain and discomfort she must have endured. Naturally, she couldn't stay quiet and had to scream from her pain and suffering. Sadly, it remains unclear how they were able to silence her. The investigation revealed that shortly before her death, her parents had gone on vacation for a few days, leaving her alone. She had no food or water and was unable to move due to her health condition. The only food she had was a peppermint candy, which was found in her stomach during the autopsy, suggesting that this was not enough to satisfy her hunger. In desperation, she may have lost consciousness and ingested detergent. Forensic experts confirmed that the cause of death was septicemia caused by decomposing flesh. For many years, Lacey endured horrific and unsanitary living conditions, accompanied only by insect larvae and mice. Witnesses described the extreme neglect and cruelty exhibited by her parents. They were so indifferent to her well-being that they couldn't even remember her age when they called emergency services. During the call, the dispatcher instructed them on how to perform first aid. Sheila attempted artificial respiration, and it seemed that Lacey briefly regained consciousness as the operator heard sounds coming from her. However, later investigations by police revealed that this was likely a ruse to mislead the dispatcher into believing the couple was genuinely following his advice. In fact, resuscitation was impossible. Lacey had died the day before. Gradually, people begin to accept the situation, but it's important to note that this isn't a mental disorder. Sheila and Clay attempted to persuade the judge to give them a more lenient sentence, arguing that they had endured many years of suffering due to their daughter's condition. After 18 months of maintaining their innocence, the couple ultimately decided to plead guilty to manslaughter, likely in hopes of receiving a lighter sentence from the Supreme Court. The events shocked the local community, particularly the church members who knew Sheila and Clay. Many were taken aback by how calm the couple appeared despite the horrific circumstances. For 12 years, their daughter suffered in their home while Sheila, Clay managed to remain composed. Despite the prosecution's strong case, some community members continued to support the family. The defense team maintained that Sheila and Clay were innocent, portraying them as loving parents who supported their daughter until the end. The mother claimed she fed and bathed her daughter daily, although the daughter typically refused food in her final months. She also stated that she visited every day and sometimes slept on the couch next to her daughter, which she described as a peaceful experience. However, this claim raised suspicions, as the mother appeared well-groomed and it seemed unlikely she could sleep in a filthy environment filled with waste and insects. The prosecution requested a 40-year prison sentence, with many supporters arguing that the couple should be imprisoned for life, as they would not suffer like their daughter did. The court eventually sentenced Sheila and Clay Fletcher, who were responsible for caring for Lacey for the past 12 years, to 20 years in prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Chloe and Aubrey Berry. Wack-BJ is a small coastal settlement in Canada with a population of under 20,000 people. It is an ideal place for starting a family with a united, quiet, safe, but still well-developed community. On December 25, 2017, the town was alive with the Christmas spirit. The windows of the apartments along the street sparkled with colorful lights, and homes were beautifully decorated. However, the festive atmosphere was disrupted by the flashing lights of police cars responding to a tragic incident. Sarah worked for the local ferry service, which connected the mainland with coastal areas and several nearby islands for communication and cargo deliveries. She studied at the University of Victoria and completed an internship for this position. Prior to this, she worked in the public relations group. She was active and energetic in everything she pursued, which brought her success. Her relationship with Andrew blossomed quickly after they met, and they soon took their relationship to the next level. They got married and started a family, welcoming their daughter Chloe in 2013. 2 years later, they gave birth to their second daughter, Aubrey. At the beginning of their relationship, the love of young couple Sarah and Andrew seemed sincere and sweet. However, the pressures of daily life began to take a toll on their bond. After the family has children, their relationship deteriorated significantly. To make matters worse, Sarah faced the heartbreak of losing her father in a car accident. All of these things caused Andrew's behavior to change a lot. He became anxious, prone to outbursts over minor issues, and often directed verbal insults at Sarah. It was clear that Sarah's father had previously helped control Andrew's temper, but now that support was gone. As a consequence, Andrew's aggressiveness increased. Initially, Sarah attempted to resolve conflicts and kept their issues private, hoping this tough time would pass. Unfortunately, matters only worsened. During a tense argument over custody of her two daughters, Aubrey and Chloe, Andrew made serious threats, claiming that he would harm the entire family if the situation did not change. Sarah was deeply troubled by these threats, and Andrew's anger became increasingly uncontrollable. Andrew's behavior became erratic and dangerous. When he got angry, he drove recklessly, creating hazardous situations on the road. At first, he tried not to act like that when his daughter was there, but he eventually lost control and engaged in these antics even with the daughter in the car. It is clear that this marriage was once a happy one, but now it has become seriously dangerous for Sarah and her daughter, who were growing up in a hostile and unsafe environment. Despite this, Sarah made efforts to maintain the marriage. Months went by until Sarah reached her breaking point. She decided to end the relationship and told Andrew directly that he needed to move out that day. Instead of leaving calmly, Andrew has sparked another debate, barging into his wife's bedroom and trying to strangle her. Sarah managed to escape, grabbed her phone, and called the police. Andrew continued his aggressive behavior until the police arrived, clearly displaying his violent nature. He was quickly arrested and taken to the police station. After this episode, Sarah obtained a restraining order, preventing Andrew from approaching her or their children. This brought a sense of relief to the family, as Andrew was now under control. He moved into his own apartment and lived alone, while Sarah took care of their two daughters. She worked hard and often worked overtime to earn money to raise her children. Meanwhile, her mother also helps take care of the children while she is at work. During this time, Sarah and Andrew finalized their divorce, and Sarah was awarded full custody of their children. Because of his aggressive behavior, Andrew lost his visitation rights and was ordered to pay alimony. For 3 months, Sarah focused entirely on her daughters, giving them her love and attention. However, everything shifted when Andrew returned, saying he missed his daughters and wanted to meet with them. Sarah refused his request, and he was unable to see the children. At that point, Andrew seemed to have changed. With the help of a lawyer and witness testimonies, he wanted to protest the court's decision to grant custody of the child. Amendments were made to the court order, allowing him to see his daughters on weekends. He was proud that he now had official permission to meet with them. Sarah was responsible for bringing the girls Aubrey and Chloe to meet their father, Andrew, and she made sure to supervise their visits. During these times, Andrew was able to connect well with his daughters. Unfortunately, this was just the start of a tragedy. A few years later, issues arose concerning alimony and the shared ownership of the house. The court ordered Andrew to pay a large amount in alimony. Meanwhile, there were ongoing discussions about how to divide the jointly owned house for the benefit of their children. Andrew, the young father, refused to contribute any money towards the house. Consequently, the court allowed Sarah to buy Andrew's share of the property, valued at $60,000, for only $20,000, after deducting the alimony debt. The agreement means that Sarah will have full ownership of the house and will no longer be able to claim maintenance payments. Sarah accepted these terms. However, Andrew opposed this arrangement and sought to contest the court's decision. During this time, He frequently took their daughters to spend time, as the court permitted him to do so without the presence of their mother or any guardianship authorities. Soon, Sarah began to notice increasingly concerning signs regarding her children. After Andrew returning them one day, she discovered a bruise-like mark on Aubrey's head. When she called Andrew, he explained that Aubrey had accidentally hit herself while playing. However, during a later conversation, Aubrey revealed that Andrew had attempted to touch her inappropriately. Andrew dismissed the accusation as absurd, but Sarah believed her daughter. Determined to protect her children, she contacted Child Protection Services. An investigation was launched, and during this time, Andrew's interactions with Chloe and Aubrey were closely monitored. Although Sarah and Aubrey expressed concerns, law enforcement and Child Protection Services found no evidence of any misconduct by Andrew, leading them to close the case. Andrew insisted that Aubrey's bruise was caused by her falling, which appeared plausible since he stated he had accidentally bumped into her during a game. Sarah argued that Andrew posed a danger to their daughters, Aubrey and Chloe. She noted that he had previously exhibited strange and suspicious behavior, and the daughters were often reluctant to spend time with him. In an effort to protect her children, Sarah attempted to restrict Andrew's visits. In late 2016, she once again questioned his ability to care for them after he left Aubrey alone in a stroller in a public area while he walked away. Furthermore, Sarah claimed that Andrew spoke badly about her in front of the children, which she thought was his way of trying to turn them against her. During the trial, Sarah and Andrew shared their accounts of the incident and presented their arguments. Ultimately, the situation remained unchanged. Aubrey and Chloe continued to live with Sarah, while Andrew was allowed to take them on holidays and weekends. The judge viewed Andrew as a caring father capable who could provide well for his daughters. The court concluded that Andrew's aggressive behavior was only temporary and linked to domestic issues, with no evidence of child abuse presented. Andrew was given another chance, and both he and Sarah received decisions that they must comply with so they can continue to communicate with 6-year-old daughter Chloe and 4-year-old daughter Aubrey. Chloe and Aubrey were bright, cheerful children with distinct personalities and interests. Chloe had just begun first grade at a local school, where she discovered her passion for horse riding, a skill her cousin had been teaching her since she was young. She also had a talent for art. Meanwhile, Aubrey was getting ready to start school. The sisters were full of energy and creativity, and they shared a close bond and a love for artistic activities. During the court hearings, the guardianship service assessed Sarah, the girl's mother, and found her to be an excellent parent. She worked hard to maintain a good relationship with her daughters, both during their time as a family and after the divorce. The judge required both Sarah and Andrew to complete special training courses, and Andrew was actively involved in the process. Unfortunately, this wasn't enough to prevent a tragic outcome. According to the custody agreement, Aubrey and Chloe were scheduled to spend Christmas 2017 with their father, Andrew. They celebrated Sarah's birthday on December 21st at morning with the children, and then Sarah took Chloe and Aubrey to Andrew's apartment on Beach Drive. Andrew lived just steps from the marina, in an upscale part of the city with a view of the Pacific coast. However, he is facing many great difficulties, including a financial crisis. He had quit his job, lost his main source of income, and developed a gambling addiction. As a result, he was unable to pay alimony or even provide basic necessities for himself and the children. From the beginning, Sarah believed it was a mistake to take Aubrey and Chloe to see Andrew. A court order obligated her to do so, and failing to comply could lead to serious repercussions for her. Sarah was especially hesitant to let Aubrey and Chloe spend the Christmas holidays with him, as she felt it was unfair, but she felt she had no alternative. Sarah asked Andrew to leave the children with her for her birthday, but he immediately threatened to sue, so she was forced to comply. As Sarah approached Andrew's apartment, her anxiety intensified. she noticed from a distance that the lights in the windows were off. For several weeks, Aubrey va Chloe had shared that during their visits with Andrew, they enjoyed using flashlights as if they were camping, which they found entertaining. Sarah was aware that Andrew had left his job in May and are having a lot of financial difficulties, which might explain why the electricity had been cut off. To avoid making the situation more tense and affect the children's vacation, she decided not to talk about the issue with Andrew and the children right away. However, she planned to address it later, as she was looking for ways to restrict Andrew meet to Aubrey va Chloe. When saying goodbye to Aubrey va Chloe, Sarah was understood that they would stay with Andrew until noon on December 25th, after which he was expected to return them. Upon returning home, Sarah noticed that Chloe had forgotten her favorite stuffed toy. She took the toy and brought it to Chloe. When she knocked on the window of Andrew's apartment, both Aubrey va Chloe appeared at the blinds in their holiday outfits, smiling and looking happy. This made Sarah feel a bit more at ease. She gave the daughters the toy and left, anticipating that she would see them again in a few days. On Christmas morning, Sarah woke up in a surprisingly quiet house and began her usual chores to pass the time until Aubrey va Chloe returned. During this time, she cleaned the house, decorated for the holiday, and placed presents under the tree, all in an effort to make the daughters happy. By 2 p.m., Sarah's parents arrived, but she was starting to worry because Aubrey va Chloe had not yet returned from Andrew's house. Andrew was supposed to return Aubrey and Chloe by noon, but Sarah had called and texted him several times without getting a response. She then tried to contact Andrew's sister, but she also ignored Sarah's calls and messages. Growing more worried, Sarah decided to go look for the children with her mother, leaving her father at home in case Andrew arrived with the daughters. When Sarah and her mother arrived at Andrew's apartment, Aubrey va Chloe were no longer at the window. Inside, the place felt eerily quiet and empty. Sarah couldn't see what was happening through the blinds. She knocked and shouted at the window, but there was no response, which only increased her fear. In desperation, they decided to speak with the neighbors. One neighbor mentioned that he had heard the children talking early in the morning and, closer to midday, he heard loud noises coming from the apartment. Initially, he thought nothing of it, but now it seemed suspicious. He also noted that he hadn't seen any strangers near the building. Alarmed, Sarah and her mother quickly contacted the police to report Aubrey va Chloe's disappearance. When the first police officer arrived at the scene, he attempted to contact Andrew, the apartment's owner, but received no answer, just as no one responded to Sarah's screams. The officer then tried to open the door and discovered it was not locked. Inside, the lights were off, and flipping the switch had no effect. It became clear that Andrew's electricity and water had been cut off due to unpaid utility bills, and he was facing eviction. Using a flashlight, the officer was met with a shocking sight that resembled a horror movie scene. Blood was splattered everywhere, including the ceiling, prompting him to immediately call for backup. The police officers cautiously, weapons drawn, aware that the killer responsible for the horrific massacre might still be inside. They followed a bloody footprint to the bathroom, where they discovered Andrew, who was naked and severely injured with multiple wounds to his chest. He was still breathing, but each breath seemed increasingly difficult. In the next room, they found Chloe on the bed. She was already dead. Her body showed numerous cuts and bruises, indicating she had been beaten with a blunt object. Nearby, a bloody baseball bat lay on the floor among her clothes. Aubrey was found in a similar state as Chloe, dressed in blood-soaked pajamas, with splatters even on the ceiling. Both children Aubrey va Chloe had suffered multiple lacerations and stab wounds, similar to those found on their father, Andrew. The police checked Aubrey va Chloe's pulses several times, but they were confirmed dead. An ambulance quickly arrived to assist Andrew. Due to the cramped space in the bathroom, he was placed on a stretcher and prepared to be carried out of the apartment. At that moment, he regained consciousness, looked at the medics, and simply asked them to end his life. Andrew was taken to hospital with other police officers, and they hoped to question him once his health has stabilized. Meanwhile, they informed Sarah that both of her daughters, Aubrey va Chloe, were dead. Overcome with grief, she screamed hysterically and desperately tried to enter the apartment. Sarah had many questions, and so did the investigators, about the brutal murders of her two young children on Christmas Day. She believed she knew the answer: their father had killed them. Given the severity of the injuries, Andrew quickly became the primary suspect. Sarah warned that he was a danger to himself and Aubrey va Chloe due to the nature of the wounds. The police thought he might be more willing to talk while in the hospital, as they often obtain truthful confessions in such situations. Therefore, they wanted to interview Andrew to uncover what had happened to the children and to him. The police suspected Andrew had harmed Aubrey va Chloe, defenseless children, and after realizing the gravity of his actions, he might have attempted to take his life. Aubrey va Chloe's bodies were so severely damaged that the expert believed he first killed Chloe, then he killed Aubrey. Chloe suffered multiple severe head injuries from a baseball bat, which led to a fractured skull. Additionally, she had 26 stab wounds. Some of her wounds were inflicted before her death, while others occurred posthumously. The cause of death was identified as blood loss. Aubrey's situation was tragically severe. She had 32 stab wounds, leading to fatal blood loss. The medical examiner determined that the attacker had flipped the children over twice to stab them in both the front and back. He appeared to be enraged and intended to ensure that the girls would not survive Christmas. Meanwhile, forensic investigators thoroughly examined the apartment and discovered men's jeans and a blood-soaked t-shirt, both belonging to Andrew. A knife, clearly the murder weapon, was also located at the scene. The amount of blood in the apartment was so much that a team of experts was called in to assist in the investigation. Experts discovered many signs that there were efforts to clean up the scene, including fingerprints on the knife and patterned socks. Blood traces were even found in the refrigerator, indicating that the perpetrator had rummaged through it after the attack. In one of the rooms, a note addressed to his sister was found. In this note, Andrew expressed a long list of disappointments about his difficulties with Sarah, and felt misunderstood by the woman he loved deeply. He conveyed a sense of betrayal and recounted the many struggles he faced during his marriage and after his divorce. According to his confession, the only source of happiness in his life was his children, which led him to decide to end their lives together. It was clearly a suicide note. After investigating the crime scene, the police concluded that Andrew had attacked and brutally killed his children, Aubrey, 4 years old, and Chloe, 6 years old. Following the incident, he entered the bathroom and attempted to harm himself, believing these injuries would also result in his death. However, doctors assessed that none of his self-inflicted wounds were life-threatening, so he survived. Andrew soon regained his composure and was placed under medical supervision, where he admitted to self-harm. After receiving treatment, he was arrested and charged with double murder. When Andrew was taken to the police station, Sarah was already there with her parents. The police believed that Andrew had harmed the children, and he confessed to his actions, which caused Sarah to burst into tears. She had to be taken away from the station because she was inconsolable. It is hard to imagine her despair and grief, especially since she had tried desperately to protect her daughters from their father. Despite filing complaints with Child Protection Services and taking legal action, Sarah could not provide evidence to prove that Andrew was a danger, and her claims were not believed. Tragically, her daughters were killed by their father. The case received widespread attention and many people held memorial services to honor Aubrey and Chloe, innocent girls who suffered. The public was outraged by Andrew's actions and expressed support for Sarah. This incident sparked a worldwide reevaluation of the child protection system and raised questions about the judge who deemed Andrew a father thoughtful and loving to his children. The judge's decision granted Andrew unsupervised access to Aubrey va Chloe, which ultimately resulted in their deaths. However, no disciplinary actions were taken against the judge or the Child Protection Service. The victims of the tragic massacre, Aubrey va Chloe, were cremated. During the investigation, the complicated relationship between Andrew and Sarah came to light. Andrew is having a lot of trouble with his finances. He left his job in May 2017 and had already begun having trouble keeping up with his rent and utility bills, leading to his electricity being cut off. His financial problems were largely fueled by his gambling addiction. Although Andrew earned a decent wage of around $200 per shift, but during this time, he became addicted to playing cards. He attempted to recover his losses, but things only worsened. He started borrowing money from anyone who would lend it to him. His gambling addiction spiraled out of control, with his gambling expenses reaching about $3,000 each month. In the fall of 2015, Andrew won a big amount of $100,000, but feeling overconfident, he quickly lost it all. In an attempt to win back his losses, he borrowed $10,000 from a man named Paul. Desperate to repay this loan, he continued to take out additional loans, while losing interest in his job, eventually quitting. By spring 2017, he was in deep financial trouble, owing approximately $225,000, with all his credit limits maxed out. Andrew was in a desperate situation, even thinking about withdrawing his savings from a pension fund. He couldn't afford to buy food and had to ask his neighbors for help to feed his daughters during their visit. His life was filled with ongoing tragedy. During the investigation, police found disturbing search queries in his internet history. About a month before the double murder, he had been searching for ways to end his own life. His problems grew worse, and on Christmas Day, he made a tragic decision. He used a brutal method to kill his daughters, doing this act coldly and mercilessly, which makes people doubt his love for them. On January 16th, the hearings for the double murder case began. The prosecutor presented detailed information to the jury about Andrew's relationship and life circumstances just before the crime occurred. The prosecution argued that Andrew willingly put himself in this situation because he could not overcome his gambling addiction. They described his actions as premeditated, using evidence like his internet browsing history to support their argument. In contrast, the defense attorney highlighted flaws in the investigation, pointing out that a patrolman had left the scene while waiting for backup, which left the situation inside unclear. The lawyer argued that Andrew and his children were victims of a killer seeking revenge for Andrew's debts after the officer had left the scene. This allowed the real perpetrator to escape through the fire exit. However, the prosecution rejected these things because the scene was under constant surveillance. There were no signs of a break-in, and the attacker could not have quietly exited the scene without being seen by the police officer. Furthermore, statement of the defense contradicted Andrew's confession made at the hospital. During his hospital stay, he even asked the medical staff to help him die, indicating that he had inflicted injuries on himself and wanted to end his life. It is clear from Andrew's suicide note that he intended to end his life and harm the daughters so that they would be with him in death. However, the lawyer maintained that the family could have been victims of a stranger, a killer who unexpectedly found Andrew and the children in the apartment. Alternatively, they could have all been random victims of a maniac. On April 25, 2017, a woman was attacked and stabbed near Andrew's house, but the police could not identify her attacker. The defense suggested that the same person could be responsible for both this attack and the murder of Andrew's children, who remains at large. However, the details of the wounds and the circumstances of each incident were different, indicating Andrew's guilt. During the presentation of the crime scene and evidence related to the murders of Aubrey and Chloe, Andrew started to cry. The prosecutor asserted that their father, Andrew, was responsible for the murders. One key piece of evidence was blood on the floor that matched Andrew's. If the attacker had been a stranger, they would probably have worn shoes typically found in a home. However, the shoes Andrew was wearing when he was arrested matched those discovered at the crime scene. Also, the forensic expert pointed out that the injuries on Andrew and the daughters were the same. Andrew acknowledged that he had inflicted wounds on himself, and similar cuts were found on the children, indicating that the same person used the same weapon. At trial, the defense attorney argued that Sarah had put pressure on Andrew, leading to the possibility of him acting aggressively. They believe Sarah is the main cause of Andrew's unstable mental health. In response, Sarah countered these claims, saying that Andrew had been aggressive for a long time, which led to their divorce. She was only trying to protect her children from a dangerous and unpredictable situation, which is why she filed complaints with various authorities, all of which were ignored. Sarah was concerned about the safety of her daughters during visits. Recently, Andrew appeared to have changed for the better, but no one realized this was just his cover. The defense continued to argue for Andrew's innocence, portraying him as a victim of his circumstances. They mentioned that Andrew owed $200,000 to another man. Andrew claimed he couldn't pay his debts, which led to him being forced to keep a suspicious bag in his apartment, the contents of which he was unaware of. Various individuals resembling criminals would periodically come to collect it, and Andrew had given them a spare key. According to the lawyers, one of these individuals committed a violent act in the apartment. The prosecution questioned Andrew about why the attacker would kill Aubrey and Chloe in his apartment while he was there. Andrew claimed that he lost consciousness after being struck, and when he regained it, he found Aubrey va Chloe unresponsive. The attacker was still in the apartment, but due to the darkness, Andrew couldn't see his face clearly. However, he noted that the assailant was a dark-skinned man with dark hair. The attacker then ran into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and tug of war, during which Andrew was struck multiple times and lost consciousness again. A mysterious bag was discovered during the investigation, but no evidence of any intruder was found, including DNA or fingerprints. The prosecution argued that Andrew's primary motive for the murders was financial distress. He was struggling to cope with life, unable to pay his debts or child support, leading him to consider killing his children to escape these obligations. The jury deliberated for 3 days and ultimately found Andrew guilty of double second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison, eligible for parole in 22 years. Andrew showed no emotion when the verdict was announced, shocking Sarah's family because the sentence was too light. They also found themselves unable to contest the verdict.